My Gavan and Melonin, and well met indeed. I'm Arachir Galadirthan, and welcome back to the channel as we continue discussing the Rings of Power. I'm again joined today by Hyganel, Jess.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about the last episode. But before we do that, one quick correction from the previous episode. I mentioned that Durin the Fourth was the Durin that died to the hands of the Balrog, and that's incorrect. It was Durin the Sixth that was killed by the Balrog. So Amazon obviously have condensed all the time, and so this Durin is likely to be the one that's killed by the Balrog. So he won't be the right Durin, but that I'm happy to overlook. But yeah, just a quick point. It was the sixth Durin, not the fourth, that was killed by the Balrog. But other than that, that was the only correction. So then on to Jessica's questions for episode number 8.
Yes. So I have a few for this one. So my first one was, it was mentioned that who we find out to be Sauron. So Halbrand mentions that he apprenticed with someone in particular before being great at smithing. Where did Sauron apprentice, or who did Sauron apprentice with?
So Sauron would have been taught originally, I'm sure we might have discussed this already in one of the episodes, but to rehash, Sauron originally would have been close to Aule, the god of smithing, the Valar of smithing. And then Morgoth was also a key creator, and obviously Sauron was Morgoth's chief lieutenant. So he learnt both under Morgoth and Aule. But Celebrimbor wouldn't have known Aule, because I'm fairly certain he was born... No, I keep getting that mixed up. No, Celebrimbor probably would have met Aule, because I'm sure he was born in Valinor, but someone will correct me on that if I'm wrong. So he might well have known him. But yeah, Sauron had Aule and Morgoth, two powerful Valar, to teach him.
Okay. So then what was Sauron's mission when he then was sent to Middle-earth?
At this point in time, he doesn't have a mission. He's in Middle-earth of his own volition, doing whatever he wants. And he never was given a mission to go and do anything.
So how did he get to Middle-earth?
He just walked there.
He just went willy-nilly on his own?
Yeah, like all the elves.
All right. So when does he team up then? And when does he...
Team up with who?
Well, doesn't Morgoth persuade him to come and be with him, and come and join his side? His vision.
That's thousands and thousands of years ago.
Right. So that the timeline. So the ring thing is completely on his own.
Yeah, Morgoth has long since been banished to the void. He's off in the unperceptible part of reality. And Sauron ran away from the big war that defeated Morgoth, and then the Second Age happened, and then now he's doing his own thing.
Yeah, but why did he originally come to Middle-earth? He just wanted to see what it was like.
Well, no, he followed Morgoth. So he was one of the first to side with Morgoth, or not one of them. He was early on in his sway to Morgoth. So he just came following his master.
Right.
It's as simple as that, I'm afraid.
Okay. In the episode, Halbrand makes a comment on the gemstones that are used in the rings, are used in the rings or waiting to be used in something that Celebrimbor is making.
Yeah.
What's special about those gemstones?
Absolutely nothing at all.
Right.
They're just colourful gemstones. I don't think the gemstones... I mean, obviously the 3 elven rings, one's of air, one's of water, one's of fire, and they have different strengths and weaknesses, but I don't think I've ever read anything that suggests the gem within them is the reason they have those strengths and weaknesses. Well, they don't have any weaknesses, but... no, the gems are just decorative, to my knowledge, again. I can't think of anything, even vaguely in the back of my mind, that suggests the type of gemstone in them has any bearing on what they are. So they're just decorative.
Mm. Okay. And another question was around the white people, or the cultists, or the dwellers, or whatever we're meant to be calling them, the white people. When they are evaporated, they look like ringwraiths, and I was just wondering, is there any connection to that, or like, are they special like the wizard is? Are they like, obviously I realize that we don't know exactly who they are, which is really disappointing, but what are they, or do you not know?
No idea. They are entirely Amazon's creation.
So, were there magical humans?
Yeah, so some humans did possess magical powers. We know some of the ring wraiths are said to be sorcerers of great power. So it's not uncommon for humans to have some sort of power. It's rare. That probably doesn't really work, does it? Humans don't often have powers. And it is, I suppose, no, uncommon's the wrong word. Rare is better. It's incredibly rare for humans to have powers. None of the humans in really any of the later works are said to have powers, and it very much seems to be a thing of the past. But it's not wholly against the canon to have a human that can do spells. But then we don't even know if they were humans. They might have been Maya. They might have been Valar. They might have been elves, for all we know. All of them had helmets on. So,
No, the one with the shaved head, she just had a little thing that came here.
Yeah, true. But no, we don't know what they are. So to speculate on them in this case is a bit futile. They come from Rhûn, which is a land that Tolkien writes basically nothing about. Rhûn is Sindarin for east.
That's my next question.
That's how.
Don't skip. I'm going to come back to that.
All right, we'll come back to talking about Rhûn, but they're from Rhûn, this unknown land. So they could be anything. Amazon again is just relying on the vagueness in the texts to create their own thing. And him banishing them and making them look like ring wraiths, to be honest, I think is just a shameless attempt to link the two visual depictions of Middle-earth together again. So that people will be like, oh, that looks a little bit like the ring wraiths when Frodo put the ring on. And it's just there to subtly remind you that this is something you've sort of seen before, to try and get people hooked in still.
Were there any magical people that became ring wraiths of the humans?
Yeah, so I said some of them were said to be sorcerers.
Right, okay. Right, I missed that. I was thinking of in my own head.
She's not even paying attention to the answers to the questions.
Well, then that could be a hint, though, couldn't it? That then there are magical people, magical humans.
Yeah.
And then they become...
They are genuinely so rare, to the point that I think sorcerers becoming Nazgul might be the only time we ever actually meet or mention a human sorcerer. Because even then I'm now doubting whether or not I'm correct on that. I know that the one thing I know about Nazgul is that they're not all kings. They are important and powerful people, but they're not said to all be kings. And in my mind, the phrase is that they were kings, mighty warriors, and powerful sorcerers from humanity. But that last bit I might be adding in entirely on my own. So there might not be any human sorcerers, but something inside me tells me that I'm right and that is the phrase used. But it could be wrong. But outside of that, no human in any of the other texts. And there are a lot of humans. Obviously, they make up the bulk of the world, really. None of them are like as overt with their powers, with magical powers, as the elves or, of course, the wizards are. So it's really, really rare. So, which would make you think and suggest possibly that the cultists aren't humans because of the really obvious power that she's wielding. But we just don't know. We'll just maybe the answers will come next season when they swan off to Rhûn.
My next question was about Rhûn. Where is Rhûn? And what is it?
Rhûn is the Sindarin word for east. And it is, and perhaps unimaginatively, in the east. Jess will again show you a map. We know very, very little of Rhûn. It's got a large sea, also unimaginatively called the Sea of Rhûn. And then that's about the extent of our knowledge. The elves and the humans both awoke in the east, or both awoke in the east, but they awoke far further east than even Rhûn, so in a land we really know nothing about. But by this time, Rhûn is a land filled with humans only, possibly elves as well, under the Ivari elves that we talked about way back in episode 1. But they're never spoken of in the story, but they might live there. But other than that, it's a human land. It falls to Sauron very early, and it makes up a large part of his supporter base. And that's about it, really.
So why didn't... Well, no, it doesn't matter.
Notable people do also go to Rhûn. So Saruman, both Blue Wizards, and even Aragorn go to Rhûn on their wanderings in their lives, but we don't know what any of them do there. Although it is suggested, the Blue Wizards, again, we've talked about before, but the Blue Wizards, by the end of Tolkien's life, he came to the theory that both of them did good. They didn't fall to evil, and that they managed to harass and break up Sauron's support in Rhûn so that he didn't have as many warriors available by the end of the storyline. But we know so little about it, yeah. So the show is, again, catching in on that vagueness in the text to do what they want. Or cashing in, I suppose, is better, isn't it?
Okay. And then my final question was around how were the rings created? Or the story of the rings creation.
Yeah, so properly, the rings were created by Celebrimbor and under the help and assistance of Sauron. So Sauron comes to the elves under the form of Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. Galadriel, Gil-galad, Elrond, they're all very cautious of him and they don't want to work with him. But Celebrimbor's like, yep, come on, join me. Let's get this hammer out. Let's do some work. And Sauron teaches Celebrimbor how to make magical rings. Using that knowledge, Celebrimbor himself makes the rings for the humans, the rings for the dwarves, and then, crucially, unknown to Sauron, in secret, after Sauron has left Eregion, Celebrimbor then makes the elven rings. And it's so vital that they're made not with Sauron's knowledge, because then, when Sauron then about 10 years later makes his own ring and puts it on his finger, the elves immediately then learn that Anatar was Sauron, they've been deceived, and this whole time they've been working for the enemy. So the three elves, they hide their rings. Sauron then invades Eregion. This is spoilers for the rest of the season, but sod it. Sauron then invades Eregion and he captures the human rings, he captures the dwarven rings, he kills Celebrimbor, and then he sods off. But the elven rings are protected because they hid them from him. And then so the elven rings carry on doing good. They're not fully under the sway of the One Ring. Their power is linked to the One Ring, but they're not as beholden to it as the others are. So they're able to carry on doing things. And then when the One Ring's destroyed, their rings lose a bit of power as well. But it's crucial, as I say, because Sauron doesn't know Celebrimbor makes the elven rings. So even when he tricks them by making his own ring, they get one over on him by making their own in secret as well. So this is one of the first times where I'm going to sway a little, I'm afraid, and just berate the show for a few moments, which is why Jessica's turning away because she doesn't want me to. But I really, really, really disliked the way these rings were made, and the fact that Celebrimbor hasn't made the human rings or the dwarven rings yet, which is just a nonsense, and why the story has such a glaring hole in it. And I'm so sorry for the little tirade here, but if Galadriel knows that that is Sauron already, why would she let them go through with the plan which he quite clearly set up? It just makes no sense whatsoever. She knows he's Sauron. She knows that he came up with the idea to make these rings. She doesn't at any moment think, oh, maybe he's got an ulterior motive. Nah, sod it. We'll just go through with it anyway and make them. What the hell? What's the worst that could happen? And I just think it's such a huge plot hole. It would have been so much better to have just followed the general story and had none of them know that he was Sauron. And then that then bleeds in a little to the Sauron Halbrand.
No, because that's going to be in our speculation.
Well, that's because we're moving on to that now.
No, we're not. We're moving with the questions from the people that watch.
All right. Well, I'll moan about Halbrand being Sauron in the speculation section then. But yeah, so that's how the rings were properly created. And also the mithril thing is partially made up as well, because only one of the elven rings was made of mithril. The other two were just made of gold. But that one, again, I don't mind that mithril's in all of them. That's I'm fine with. Also, I think the show's attempt to show that Gil-galad was not going to follow the original plan, in that when Sauron came to the elves in the story, in the book story, Gil-galad is one of the first that says, no, I don't trust him, don't work with him, I don't know who this guy is, but don't entertain his ideas. And I think the show has tried to show that by Gil-galad being the one saying, no, it's too late to do anything about the decay. Don't try and make the rings. Let's just get out of Middle-earth while we can. Which, and again, I don't think that's particularly great, but at least it kind of sticks a little true that Gil-galad was against it. But he probably wasn't against the ring creation. He just didn't like Anatar. So we'll just have to wait and see. But then the final point on the rings, and again, this one is sort of in Amazon's favour, so I'm trying to walk a balanced line. But the rings, the elven rings, did have the power to counter the decay and the slow decay of time that affects the elves. So the elves are fading away. That's a key theme throughout the whole of the Lord of the Rings, is that their power and their splendor came from the First Age, and then because of the actions of mankind throughout, elves are slowly fading away, and they're all buggering off to Valinor, where they're going to live out the rest of their lives away from the rest of the world. And that is a plot point. And the rings are given the power to kind of halt that decay, which is why Lothlorien's such an amazing place and it's protected so well, because Galadriel has one of the rings and she uses its power to protect it.
I hope we see more of Lothlorien.
Well, we haven't even seen any of it yet.
No, but I know. But I hope we actually do see it, because when we
we will.
When we meet Galadriel in the film, she's in a wood.
Yeah, she's the queen of there. I think, again, we'll talk about that in speculation, because
Yeah.
I think that's where Celeborn's going to come in. But anyway, so that's the rings. I was disappointed with the way the rings were made, but we'll probably talk about that more generally in the next video, where we talk about what we liked and disliked about the whole show. So for this one, that's...
Moving on to the end, on the outro. We're still in the main basis of the video.
Yeah, but I'm just linking. I'm linking forward.
Linking.
But do you have any other questions before we move on to the people's questions?
No, the bit that I was going to say will probably be in the bit that I was going to talk about will probably now be in the speculation section when we talk about what happens in the next season.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on to your questions. So the first question we have is from
the Discord.
From the Discord, which is from Natlev Chapman. Natlev Chapman. And the question is there any particular reason why Círdan, Gil-galad and Galadriel are given the rings, is there any special reason as to why they're given the rings, other than being great leaders? Also, does Gil-galad's ring go to Elrond after Gil-galad's death?
Yeah, so the 3 elven rings just go to the 3 most powerful elves in Middle-earth at the time, which happens to be Galadriel, Círdan, and Gil-galad. I say Gil-galad, but it should be pronounced Gil-galad. The show is correct, but I'm so used to my inaccuracy that I'm going to stick with it. But yeah, Círdan hasn't come into the show because, again, they're snubbing my boy. Círdan is the most interesting elf in Middle-earth because he's the oldest elf in Middle-earth, having awoken with the first elves that ever awoke. He's literally been alive for the entirety of elven history, but both the films and now the TV show apparently are going to ignore him. So I assume the show's going to give Gil-galad's ring to Elrond. Or give Gil-galad a ring, give Elrond a ring, and give Galadriel a ring, because I don't think they're going to bother bringing Círdan into it. Or they might give Círdan's ring to Celebrimbor, and then Celebrimbor will give it to Gandalf. So in truth, Círdan gets a ring. Yeah, so Círdan gets a ring. He gives it to Gandalf when Gandalf arrives in the year 1000 of the Third Age. Putting more reason why the stranger's off. Gil-galad gets a ring and he gives it to Elrond, or rather Elrond takes it from his cold dead corpse. But no, he gets it from Gil-galad before he dies. And Galadriel has a ring that she keeps to the end. So yeah, Círdan's ring goes to Gandalf, so they'll get it to Gandalf somehow in this one without Círdan being present, which is a snub.
So does Gandalf have the ring in the films?
Yeah.
Why doesn't he use that ring?
Because he's an all-powerful wizard. The ring doesn't have... The ring has...
no power.
The ring would... It'd be difficult to talk about what the ring does, yeah.
Right, okay.
You can't hold it up and be like, fire breath or whatever.
Like that thing where they... What's that show where they've joined all their rings together and then they make a big thing?
Like Power Rangers.
No, they do it in Rick and Morty where they make a big robot. Remember?
Yeah, but the show that's based on, we've never watched.
We've never watched it, I know, but anyway.
So, yeah, that's what happens with the rings.
Okay.
All right, next question.
The next question is from Dark Cookie. And they say, what do we know about the colonies of the Númenóreans had? The show made it seem like Pharazôn only agrees to send the troops because he wants to control the land and its resources, but now we know that the colony of Pelargir exists already. Yeah,
so Pharazôn at the moment, they're just doing what they can to try and gently ease you into the idea that he's going to actually be the big baddie. Which at the moment, if you don't know the lore, the show wouldn't really have presented to you. But Pharazôn is going to be the worst person in humanity's history, to be honest. I can't imagine anyone else would beat him to that title. So we're excited to see what's going to happen to him. But yeah, Numenor already had a number of colonies. Pelagia, Londare, although they abandoned Londare after flooding. But Pelagia, we've got Umbar, we've got even more south of that. There's plenty of Numenorian colonies. So that's just, they put that in, as I say, I think, just to let you know that Pharazôn's going to be the voice of dissension and eventually become the primary antagonist. And I think that's all it is, really.
Do you think on Pharazôn, do you think they're still going to stick with, because was Miriel in the lore? Was she?
Miriel is his cousin.
But was she a queen in the lore?
No, well, yes. So Numenor does allow female queens, as it were. They don't know. I can't remember what the official name is, but a male or a female can be the ruler of Numenor. So officially, she becomes the queen now, and then Ar-Pharazôn, her first cousin, much against Numenorian tradition, forces her to marry him, and he becomes the king, and he essentially usurps her. And that's what we're going to see. But I don't think the show, this is speculation again, I don't think the show is going to be that crass with it, or crass is the wrong word, but I don't think they're going to be that dark with it. And I think that's why they've blinded her, because he's going to step in and take over, and they're going to use something about her now being blind to be the reason that Pharazôn's going to become the king.
Rather than them being married.
Rather than him forcing himself on his own cousin.
Yeah.
Which is what really happens.
Yeah.
So that's Pharazôn. He's going to become a really good character, hopefully. Good as in interesting to watch. He's hella evil, but he's going to be a very interesting character.
Thanks. So the next question is from Erazed, and it is it ever said what language the Valar or Maya speak? You mentioned amongst the elves that they spoke Quenya. But did they have their own language for themselves?
Yeah, so I briefly touched upon this because we don't know much about it, but the Ainur, which is the collective name for Valar and Maiar, and also then some beings that didn't come down to the earth, but we'll use the word Ainur. They had their own language called Valarin, but apparently it was so alien to elven ears that they didn't actually like hearing it. Like it hurt them to hear this language. So the Valar adopted the elven language incredibly early because they're beings of benevolence and they didn't want to hurt their subjects just by talking. So Valarin, their language, we know very, very, very little about, and only the absolute die-hard, hardcore linguist fans have ever really looked into it. But I don't know anything about it. Couldn't even tell you a word from it.
So the next question is from It's Vic, and there are two questions from It's Vic. So we'll start with the first one. And they say, I didn't realise that Sauron made the Rings of Power. I thought it was Celebrimbor. What does Celebrimbor make, and is it something to do with Mithril?
Yeah, so just to recap, Celebrimbor makes the rings. It is him that does it, but he does it after being taught by Sauron. And that's how Sauron is then able to make sure that the One Ring will rule over the others. Because he's tricking Celebrimbor into making tools for him, basically. But it is Celebrimbor that actually forges them, actually bangs the hammers, makes the shapes, does all of that. Sauron just teaches him how, and inadvertently, or rather very advertently, corrupts them while he's doing it.
So is it like a weaved magic kind of that's into them?
No idea. Tolkien
Okay.
never explains again. Sauron just teaches Celebrimbor how to make these rings, and somehow in that process he's able to make sure that his ring will dominate them.
I'm going to assume it's a weaved magic, and then by having the last one it like activates them. That's how I'm going to have that in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. It's Vic's second question is also, if Gandalf was the more important quest, why is he not the White Wizard? Is Saruman more skilled or powerful than Gandalf?
So all 5 wizards have the same quest. The Valar don't want to interfere in Middle-earth, but they also realise that Sauron is getting out of control, and that if they don't do something, there's going to be a real problem that might then mean they have to come back and intervene. And the last time they intervened, they sunk an entire continent. So they get their heads together and they think, let's just send 5 powerful people to try and lead the free peoples against the shadow. So all 5 wizards have the same task: guide the elves and the humans of Middle-earth to defeat Sauron. That's their sole purpose. And as we've mentioned before, Gandalf is pretty much the only one depending on what you want to think about the Blue Wizards, he's the only one that really goes all in on that theory. Saruman very quickly falls from greatness and thinks that he can claim the ring, and Radagast very quickly falls to making sure that the world is saved, and he just tries to save animals and trees. But in answer to the second part of your question, Saruman is more powerful than Gandalf, decidedly so. And Gandalf is only able to jump over him by dying and being deemed worthy enough to come back. And when he comes back, he is raised up to be more powerful than Saruman. But that's why Saruman captures him. He only manages to get away because Gwaihir comes and flies him away from Orthanc. But Saruman is more powerful than Gandalf. He just fails in his task.
In the last episode, we mentioned about the fact that the wizards were sent by different...
Yeah.
And Gandalf was sent by the top one, by the top Valar.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain Gandalf is chosen by Manwë to be his representative, and Saruman is chosen by Aule, Radagast by Yavanna, and I don't know who chooses the Blue Wizards. I think Arome chooses one of them. Arome is like the hunter god of the Valar, and he's the coolest of them all, to be honest, in my opinion. So they're all sent by a different Valar. And yeah, Gandalf is sent by the most powerful one, but he's not the most powerful. Saruman is more powerful than him.
And with the Blue Wizards, were they sent down together?
So Tolkien changes on this one. That's why I thought the Stranger might be the Blue Wizard, because whilst writing the story, Tolkien then eventually changed his mind and had the Blue Wizards coming to Middle-earth first on their own. And they came in that second telling, they come in the Second Age rather than the Third Age. And that's why I thought the Stranger might be one of the Blue Wizards, because of that little change. But he's not, is he? He's Gandalf.
We're going to speculate on that, kind of.
But yeah, there we are. That hopefully answers your question.
And then the last question, or the next question, is from Kevin Systema. How would you say that? Would you say that like that?
Systema.
I was wondering if the person burning the Hobbit houses might actually be Sauron, or did he otherwise make the Hobbit houses burn? If it isn't, how do they make it burn if they're an ordinary person? Now, I think this one might have kind of been answered when I asked about the white people, whether they could have been humans that were sorcerers.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
they're either human sorcerers or they're just something else.
Something else, a being of some sort.
Yeah.
So the next question is from Vincent Katibi. And they have asked, do you think Amazon would dare kill off Isildur? I see that nobody has asked about it, but maybe because we all know later on in the show. And how do you think that Pharazôn will become our Pharazôn? Now, I think that we've answered the bit about Pharazôn becoming our Pharazôn a minute ago. Or the Pharazôn, Pharazôn.
Yeah, so I think her blindness is going to be how Pharazôn becomes king. But for Isildur, no, there's no way they would kill off Isildur, because we know Isildur... Amazon is trying to link into the film so much, as we've seen from this episode, where it was like drop a stone at any point in this episode and there was some sort of throwback to the films. There's no way they will kill off Isildur, because we see Isildur die in the films. Everyone knows Isildur survives. It's the first 30 seconds of the first film, or the first 5 minutes of the first film. So, no, I think Isildur's storyline is now going to tie into Arondir, who wasn't in the final episode. And I assume he's going to do something related to the resistance of Sauron in Mordor, or whatever's going on over there now that their king has turned out to be Sauron. I think Isildur's going to be found. There's no way they'll kill him. Absolutely no way. He's way too important. That would genuinely be on the same level as having a Lord of the Rings film where you didn't have Aragorn in it. No, that's how important Isildur is as a character to the Second Age. So he definitely won't be killed off.
So the next question is from YouTube. Now, I'm really sorry, but I don't know how to say your first name, but I believe it is Greek. But the second part of your name is Thanatos. And you have stated, a bit late to the party, but in the first episode you say something akin to the Valar being bad, or rather not good. I was wondering what makes them so.
So it's a bit complicated, but the Valar are good, but they're so good that it faults them. And this is seen in one very key aspect, in that long before Beleriand is destroyed in the War of Wrath, Morgoth flees to Beleriand and he does some bad things, and the Valar go over and get him. This is, again, another heavily memed aspect of Lord of the Rings, because one of the Valar is called Tulkas, and he's basically the Hercules or the Ares of the Valar. And he comes down specifically to capture Morgoth. And he's so physically powerful that he just strolls into Morgoth's fortress, gets him in a headlock and walks him back to Valinor. Like, this guy is insane. So everyone loves him. But anyway, they capture Morgoth, they bring him back to Valinor, knowing that he's doing bad things. But their concept, they're so good that they don't understand the concept of evil. They can't grasp what Morgoth is doing. So they very quickly release him. They capture the being of all evil in Middle-earth. They bung him in a cell. And then after basically like a week, they think, oh, why have we got Morgoth locked up? Like, he's not even done anything anyway. So they let him out again. And then he goes on to do even worse things. And then everything happens. So the Valar are really tricky in that, yeah, they're beings of such pure good, they can't even comprehend evil. And that's what I was generally referring to when I spoke about them right at the very beginning. But if they hadn't been such moronic beings, none of the story would have happened, because Morgoth would be still trained up in Valinor with no one listening to him. But alas, they let him out. So that's what I was referring to.
So now we will move on to the speculation section. We have one question from someone who has put forward a speculation which I thought that we could answer or discuss. And that is from Asheron L, I would say. And it's 2 speculation points. So the first one is, could it be that Adar captured Celeborn in an earlier time, that he was among the people who dug the tunnels like Arondir, and that with the eruption of Mount Doom he was then able to escape and will then be reunited with Galadriel, maybe in Lindon if she arrives with Halbrand.
So that's been debunked already because she's not in Eregion, which is where they've gone to. But I suppose they could be back in Lindon, yeah. But I think, personally, Celeborn is going to already be in Lothlorien, and that's where she's going to meet him. Either that, or begrudgingly, I would agree with Nerd of the Rings that they might make Celeborn be like Glorfindel and have him reborn, so that an elven rebirth can be shown on screen somehow. Because obviously Glorfindel didn't get his moment in the sun, so maybe they'll make Celeborn come back. But personally, I would like to see Celeborn already in Lothlorien, and that's where Galadriel is going to meet him. She's going to go over there for some reason and stumble across him, and he's going to have thought that she died, and she's thought that he died, and then they meet each other and live happily ever after. Personally. But yeah, he could well be in Lindon, but she's already been to Lindon, so you'd think they would have met already. But then you said that he was captured by Adar. But no, I don't think he would have been captured by working in the Adar thing, because I think we would have seen him already.
Probably Arondir and their little troop would have been like, oh my god, more elves. And anyway, the next part of their speculation is the star formation that the stranger is looking for is in how do I say that?
Have a go.
Eriador? Specifically where the Shire will be, and that the journey will be, in essence, the founding of the Shire.
Yeah, so that's debunked already, isn't it? Because the 8th episode has told us that the stars are in Rune. So I think your general point is probably correct. The journey's different, but the end point's the same. I do feel confident that at the end of the show, Amazon is going to make some sort of nonsense founding of the Shire.
With is it Poppy?
Yeah, with the Hobbit lady that didn't go with the one that's now leading the Hobbit family. I just feel confident they're going to end at the Shire and found it. Yeah. All right, so on to your own speculation.
My speculation.
I'm all ears.
All ears. So my speculation is, obviously at the moment, most things are hinting towards that the wizard is Gandalf.
Most things are hinting. You mean they've smacked you over the head with a Gandalf-sized mallet, and you're still questioning whether or not it's going to be Gandalf?
Yes. So obviously we've had lots of things that hint towards it. I'm going to point out the things that we've had that hint towards it. The main bits.
Yeah, go for it.
So the main bits that I had was that when he muttered a phrase around the nose phrase.
Follow your nose.
Follow your nose. You had a little chuckle. And then we discussed it, and we mentioned the fact that that's what he says to Merry in the Mines of Moria.
Yeah.
Then I wanted to write down that when the wizard kills the white people, they turn in, or there's moths appear on their faces, and then they disintegrate into lots of moths or butterflies, however you want to put it. And obviously in the film, Gandalf whispers to a moth, but that is only in the film. Am I correct?
Yeah, it is.
However, no one has confirmed that he's Gandalf yet. The guy that plays him, I don't know his name, I haven't looked it up. In interviews, he hasn't said that he's Gandalf or hinted that he's Gandalf, and it could be a huge kind of like, oh my god, when it's then not Gandalf, because we're all thinking it's Gandalf, and it could just be a thing to get us all, people like me who've only seen the films, to be like, oh, that's Gandalf. Okay, yeah, I know who that is. I really liked Gandalf. This is going to be a good show. And then it was like, it's actually the Blue Wizard. Oh my god, there's more wizards in the world.
No, I'm not convinced. I think Gandalf is way too recognisable for the show. He's been in Lord of the Rings. He's been in The Hobbit. Obviously, Ian McKellen's presence as Gandalf is so well known. Gandalf is almost synonymous with Lord of the Rings. So Amazon absolutely are going to want him in. And as I say, it's gone past foreshadowing now. He just is Gandalf. He's short of just having said the name, he is Gandalf.
But I do think it would give a lot more freedom for them if it was the Blue Wizard, because we don't know as much about the Blue Wizards. So they'd have a lot more freedom in terms of like where he goes, what he does, and
but I counter that point because Gandalf doesn't come to Middle Earth until the 1,000th year of the Third Age, and we're currently at least a minimum of 1,000 years before that point. So anything that they do at the moment with Gandalf is all up to them because they're making it up already. Whatever wizard he is, Amazon are making this whole story up. So they already have the freedom to do what they want because they're making it up. So no, there's just no. Personally, I think there is no way that's not Gandalf.
I mean, I'm not sad about the fact if it is Gandalf. I like Gandalf. I think he's a good wizard, and I think
So does he. I am good.
Yeah, but he is
terrible.
Terrible
dialogue.
He's been a good point, I think. He's been an interesting point, and he's been good. You made the camera shake.
I did. So what's your next speculation?
My next speculation was around Halbrand.
Oh, we should do that one last, because I've got a lot of thoughts about Halbrand being Sauron. It's going to take up some time.
Well, no, because I was going to... My only other
Oh,
one
and then
was,
the next season.
Yeah, it was next
All right,
season.
yeah, sure. Go for it then. What are your thoughts on Halbrand Sauron?
Halbrand. Obviously, we found out that he is Sauron, and I know that you're very irritated about the fact that they've muddled up his timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am.
However, my thought was, obviously we discussed about the rings earlier. She's gonna
just ignore her.
My thoughts about the rings earlier was that maybe he could come back as Anatar now that he's gone to Mordor. He'll do whatever he's going to do in Mordor. Then he comes back as Anatar to assist with the creation of the next rings. And then that's when the skepticism will come in from Galadriel and Gil-galad and Elrond. And then it's just a bit reversed, but it all kind of hits the mark.
So, possibly, I suppose, actually, there is a thin thread that he might come back. So the show's already shown you this is Sauron, so that then when he comes as Anatar, everyone will know. But I just can't imagine they're going to do that. I just don't think they're going to do that. And also, I was just looking before we recorded this, and Anatar, the word Anatar does not appear, to my knowledge, and to the index of the Lord of the Rings, it doesn't appear anywhere in the text. But then Anatar is such a vital part of the ring creation. I can't believe they've done away with him. I am distraught at this.
It might be that it still has the protection. The ring, the three elven ones are still kind of protected because they added in a third, which was against what Sauron had suggested. And then so they're then uncorruptible because there's the third one, as Galadriel said.
But then who's going to make the other rings now? Celebrimbor.
But
now Sauron's
as
not
my
there.
Speculation would just say, they then see that it's their powers working, they divvy out all the rings that they're going to, and then another elf comes back as Celebrimbor's team, he's on the team, as to create them because he's going to need more people than his 3 that he had in his workshop or 4 that he had in his workshop. And then this one elf is like, oh, I'm so good at smithing, and Celebrimbor's like, yeah, you're really good, and raises him up, and then we find out that it's Anatar.
Yeah, no, I just can't see it. I think they don't have the rights to Anatar. The estate hasn't budged on the use of Anatar, and this whole ring creation thing has just been so terribly rushed. I'm disappointed because Anatar is one of the coolest things in the Lord of the Rings. Sauron, it went like, for most people, you read Lord of the Rings first. And I mean the books, The Lord of the Rings. So when you read those, all you know of Sauron is he's evil and he wants to rule the world, and they're currently fighting to destroy him. Very simple. There's nothing to his motivation. He's just the embodiment of evil that the story has, so that there's an antagonist. And you're like, all right, okay, this is one of the first fantasy books ever written, so I'll let him off the fact that this is very much a good versus evil, because he's the first one to have done it, so everyone else is copying him. So it's a trope overused now, but he was the first. Obviously, people debate that, but generally speaking. And then you read the wider text and you learn, oh, actually, Sauron isn't just this evil figure, this evil armor statue thing. He's not just this oppressive eye that looks over the world and kills at will. He actually has a bit more nuance to him. And then you learn about Anatar and the fact that he could come in any form, and he tricks the elves into doing his bidding. And you think, oh, I'm starting to actually like this. This is interesting. And so for me personally, I find the Anatar storyline really interesting. It's cool, to my mind, to have your chief enemy walking amongst you in a guise that fools even his own primary enemies. And so I was genuinely really looking forward to meeting Anatar. Just the thought that he was the enemy walking amongst them. I like those kind of storylines. I was looking forward to that. I'm not so much disappointed because this last episode has just absolutely done away with the lore altogether. I'm disappointed because I was looking forward to Anatar, and apparently the show's just not going to bother with him. So on that subject then, leading more into Halbrand being Sauron, and just to continue my moaning, I really dislike that Halbrand is Sauron. I've already mentioned about the ring thing. Galadriel finding out it's Sauron and then not stopping them is just moronic. Why would Sauron save Galadriel in the ocean at the beginning? He knows who Galadriel is. He knows her vendetta. He's been fighting her and her family for thousands of years. Why would he save her? And then why would he help the Númenóreans against the orcs? It's just such nonsense. And I'm disappointed because from a writing standpoint, it feels like they thought right at the beginning, let's make Sauron a character from like day one, and let's interweave his story amongst all the story arcs, so that when we reveal he's Sauron, people are going to be like, oh no, he's been so good, he's done this, he's done that. But then when you actually stop and think, hang on a minute, this is Sauron you're talking about. This is like the devil coming to Earth and then helping all of the like popes that have ever been here to spread Christianity. Like, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, he's working with his enemies.
They did try and explain that. They did go through the points that he did and why and blah, blah, blah in the actual episode.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, yes, he tried to save Galadriel, or rather, he didn't try. He saved Galadriel because he thought he could turn her to serve him. But that in of itself is a nonsense. He killed her brother. Why would she serve him? I just thought that was stupid. And the only bit, again, I want to desperately walk the line down the middle, but I'm finding it difficult. The only bit that I think works in their favour is that when Sauron, or when Morgoth lost the War of Wrath, we do know that Sauron did repent briefly. But he didn't repent as in to say, oh my goodness, look how much evil I've just done. I better go and start doing some good. He repented because he thought, oh my goodness, look how outrageously powerful my enemy is. Why did I ever fight against them? The Valar have the power to banish me from existence, basically. Why would I try and fight against them? They've sunk a continent. They've defeated my king's armies. Like, that was why he repented, out of fear and self-preservation, not because he suddenly woke up one morning and he'd seen Jesus. And so that just, but they've taken that and they've turned it into that second one, where apparently he woke up one morning and it literally is like he saw Jesus. He even said he saw in the sun, in the rising of the sun, he felt the love of the one or whatever. And the One is the name for God in Middle-earth. He is the God. He's called the One, Eru Iluvatar. Eru literally means one. But anyway, so he's woken up and he's seen Jesus, apparently. But that just wasn't what happened. Sauron was just afeared of the Valar, and he ran away. And then he came back 500 years later, poked about and thought, oh, they've all forgotten about this. I can probably take over now. And that's exactly what he did. So I just couldn't. This episode, I just couldn't. Halbrand being Sauron makes no sense at all, and it feels like just a got ya moment. And that's why I was desperate for the stranger to be Sauron, because he hadn't done anything yet. He hadn't defined his character. But they were desperate to make you think that Halbrand was just good. He was the king of these people, and he just wanted to save his people. Well, he didn't want to do that. He just wanted to run away from them. But he then accepted that he would save his people. But it was just all so convoluted and just rubbish. Just rubbish. And now Halbrand is Sauron. The elves aren't going to let him back in. And then that's not even to say anything of the fact that Galadriel, Gil-galad, and Elrond knew that Anatar was dodgy. They didn't know that he was Sauron, but they knew something was off about him. So they didn't work with him, and the show's decided to ignore that bit as well. So Galadriel, who's been searching for Sauron forever, actively assists him. It was just awful. I didn't like this episode, and I don't like Halbrand being Sauron.
Be saving your opinions for the next video.
I will do, and I will moan about Halbrand being Sauron again with real determination in the next episode.
Brief pause to make it so that we weren't being blinded by the sun, because we've been recording for so long that the sun has moved.
It's Eru Iluvatar trying to blind me. He's like, Galu, stop turning from the light. You were one of the ones that defended it.
So the last bit that we're going to look at is our thoughts for the next seasons. No, do you want to go first?
Season.
Oh no, mine was seasons. But
right. Okay.
Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
No, I'll go first because I don't have very much to say. So my thinking is season 2 is now then going to be Sauron's going to either kill or rule over Adar. So I think he's going to kill him, to be honest. Obviously, Adar is still alive. He currently controls the orcs, and he currently controls Mordor, but we've just seen that Sauron's gone back to Mordor. So I think Sauron's story arc for Season 2 is going to be claiming Mordor for himself and starting to build Barad-dûr. I think Numenor's story arc is going to be how Pharazôn takes over and converts the island fully to evil, and builds up their power as well. And the elves, I really don't know. I don't want it to be, but I think then the next season for them is going to be them creating other rings. Whether that's humans or dwarves, I don't know. But obviously they need to create the other rings. That's a part of the storyline they cannot ignore. So I assume that's going to be the elven storyline of the season 2.
So that's a lot to happen in one season.
Yeah, but they've been interweaving all 3 together already, haven't they?
No, I know. So I think most likely we're going, because it is called the Rings of Power, so it's probably going to be a season per ring group, is what I think. So we've had the elves rings,
Which should have come last.
We've had the elves ones. We've got the dwarves, the men, and that's it.
And then the one.
And then the war at the end, where Sauron's defeated. I think that'll be the 5 seasons. Because they've said we're going to have 5 seasons, aren't they?
Yeah, I suppose.
So then that's what I think, but I don't know which one they do next. Obviously, the elves should have been last, as you said. So obviously that's now at the front. So then I think the next ring focus is going to be the dwarves, because I think something's going to happen, and obviously we've already seen the Balrog, and so something will happen with the Balrog. So maybe Durin and the Elrond bromance will only be for one more season, and then the humans, because we haven't really met any of the other humans other than the ones in the Southland, so we don't even know who the rings for them would be going to. So we need to meet some more humans for them to be important enough to get rings. Then Sauron has to make the ring. I don't know what else would be in that season, but he has to make that ring, and then we'd have the war. I think if we continue to have 5 seasons, if we don't continue to have 5 seasons, I think they'll condense it, but I think we're going to have at least 3.
Yeah. I mean, this episode showed more than any other episode that Amazon is not just going to fill in the blank parts of Tolkien's texts, but they're going to change it altogether. So that's why my speculation is limited compared to Jess's, because I think with what Amazon has shown us now, they're going to do anything they want. So who knows what's going to come next? But yeah, lots has got to happen. Numenor's got to fall, which obviously isn't a spoiler because we've seen that, and Tar Palantir's just warned whatever her name is. So we know Numenor's got to fall. We know that Khazad-dûm's got to fall. We know that Eregian's got to fall because Celebrimbor's got to die. Spoiler alert. So all of those things have got to happen. So maybe, yeah, over the course of 3, but then maybe what they'll do is do like a prologue that links into the epilogue. No, that's the other way around, isn't it? Do an epilogue at the end of their whole show that links into the prologue of The Lord of the Rings. So that the last alliance at the start of the Fellowship of the Ring is then going to be like an ending montage, if you will, of the end of the whole show, rather than actually focus on the last alliance properly. I wonder if they're just going to link the two together in the same way and give you like a 10-minute, this is what happened after the events of this show kind of thing. I don't know. But anywho, that is episode number 8.
Now we are going to do 2 more videos.
2 more videos.
At least. And we thought the next 2 are going to be, the first one is going to be an overview of the series. So we'll look at just our general thoughts around it, pick out bits and pieces that we liked, didn't like, and just general thoughts. And then the next video after that will be an Easter egg.
The last video.
The next video will be the Easter egg video of all the things which Gallo has pointed out to me that I know nothing about in the episodes, and we didn't choose to speak of them because they would be big story, like filling in what they are, what happened, why they're important, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So people that like Gallo would see in an episode and think like, "Ooh, I think that's whatever."
Yeah, like Gil-galad's spear. We're going to talk about that. So it's not, but like in this last episode, Gil-galad's holding a spear. For most of you, you'll just think, "Oh, Gil-galad's holding a spear," but for the rest of us, it'll be like, "Oh, look, it's Aeglos." So yeah, we're just going to touch on all the little Easter eggs that have popped up throughout the show. Have a guess at what we think they are. Well, I say we, probably just me, but Jess will try and assist. And yeah, we'll talk about all the little Easter eggs that have cropped up. So if you are interested in the lore behind it and you don't want to have to go out there and research it all yourself, we'll do a video where we just touch on everything that that has cropped up that means something to people like me, but might not mean anything if this is your first time with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. And then if there are more videos, we will let you know. But we might be doing a poll, or Gally might do a poll as to whether that's something someone would watch and whether my ideas would suffice.
Yeah, Jessica's very keen for us to continue this because she's enjoying it a great deal. But as anyone that's followed my channel now for the last 7 years will know, I'm leaving YouTube pretty much right now. The aim is to kind of be done before we go to New Zealand next February in 2023. But Jess is trying to keep me around until then, but so we shall see how successful she is. But if you are here, just to touch on very briefly, if you have watched the channel for the DAC playthroughs, I'm not sure that either Dol Amroth or Bree are going to continue, and this discussion of Lord of the Rings with Jess's viewpoints as well will likely see out the channel. But anyway, hopefully we will do, well, for Jess's point of view, hopefully we'll do a few more videos after the Easter egg one, but we'll see where we are and what we can storyboard and think up. But for now, that's the end of this one. So please do let us know your thoughts on the show as a whole, because they might feature in next week's episode when we talk about what we liked, disliked. Certain comments might make it into that video. Let us know what your thoughts of episode 8 were, and crucially as well, let us know your speculation on what you think the show's going to do with the next 4 seasons, if it does indeed have 4 more. But for now, and until we speak again, dear friends, Navar Naden Pedemad Melunin,
and farewell.